President Trump's message to farmers: we did it. Farmers have been suffering in the fallout from the China trade war. Farmers' profits hit historic lows last year. But Trump says the new preliminary agreement with China will, in his words, massively benefit farmers. The deal includes larger purchases of U.S. soybeans and other farm goods. As Brock Turner reports, Hoosiers hope China can meet those targets.
Don Lamb farms several thousand acres of corn, soybeans, and wheat near Boone County. He's taking a wait-and-see approach, but he thinks the new China trade deal offers him and other farmers additional stability.
For me to say, yeah, I know that the pieces are in place to make this a good deal, I can't. Am I optimistic? Yes, and I appreciate the efforts that are being put forth to make it happen.
An unseasonably wet spring paired with decreasing trade opportunities in China pushed prices to their lowest in decades. Theoretically, news of the deal should have helped. That's because it includes a commitment from China to purchase more than $40 billion of farm goods each year. The problem is, though, some are skeptical as to whether or not it will happen, so markets have stayed mostly flat as a result.
I think the initial reaction to that is yeah, you're kind of surprised that there isn't a more positive reaction in the markets. But the reality is we still haven't sold the products and China still hasn't bought them. And until that happens, we really can't expect there to be much of a move in the market.
Some farmers also stand to benefit from the new United States-Mexico-Canada trade agreement, although many in a less significant way. The Senate voted in favor of that deal last week. Both are a good thing for the Trump re-election campaign as he works to shore up support among his core base. Lamb says he believes farmers will continue to stand by the president and his trade policies.
We're always optimistic. And also from a farmer's perspective, we know that we don't know all the details. And so we really have to just trust who we're working with to be putting those details in place.
But those who study trade policy say the deal isn't likely to have significant effects on businesses or farmers. That's largely due to the deal's lack of enforceability and how it deals with a conflict if a party fails to uphold its portion of the deal.
Any other trade agreement, you have a clear dispute settlement mechanism. It's the core of a trade agreement, is to say there will be problems, there will be conflicts, there will be different opinions. Now, how do we address this conflict?
The president hailed the deal on Twitter, saying it was, quote, by far the greatest and biggest deal ever made. Housekrat, however, isn't convinced. He believes it has more to do with re-election than trade.
All other tariffs stay in place. The uncertainty stays in place. It is questionable to force Chinese to buy American agricultural products. And because this uncertainty, a lot has moved to other countries. So China is, for example, purchasing more agricultural goods from Brazil. And so I doubt that this will really have a significant impact. For sure not in 2020.
Estimates show Hoosier farmers export about 30% of the state's annual soybean harvest to China.
Now we're going to stay with the trade deal for a bit and learn more about how the agreement will affect Indiana's manufacturing sector. Mitch Legan joins us from the newsroom with that part of the story.
After 2 years of uncertainty surrounding President Trump's trade deal with China, many Indiana manufacturers, including Columbus-based Cummins, see his Phase 1 trade deal as a step in the right direction.
I think it is a win. This summer, things got a little heated between the two countries. It was not going in the right direction. We were threatening tariffs on each other every day. This certainly de-escalated everything and got everyone back at the table to discuss.
The new deal, passed last week, secures a pledge from China for nearly $80 billion in new manufacturing purchases. It doesn't call for new taxes, but still leaves $360 billion in tariffs in place. While Hyder says Cummins is pleased with the steps the Trump administration has taken with Phase 1, she says the tariffs that are still in place will continue to make things difficult.
It not only makes it more difficult for us to access that supply chain, but it also makes our products more costly, right? And again, like if we are competing with international, mainly European and Asian competitors, they are not having to incur the same costs that we are.
That's why they hope Trump will begin to reduce some of those tariffs when and if the two sides begin discussing a Phase 2 of the deal.
He makes a lot of noise and does some unilateral action and then escalates a situation to bring people to the bargaining table. And then he tries to bargain them into a more advantageous position.
Weinkauf says Trump's previous negotiating tactics make that phase 2 hard to predict.
He hasn't actually been able to negotiate much. He's ended up relatively close to the status quo, and so essentially he's created a heightened bargaining situation and not actually been able to leverage that into substantial gains.
He says the tariffs in place will continue to drive up prices for many Chinese imports and goods produced in the United States.
And so I think the more complex world that we live in today means that a better trade strategy would be to not treat goods as simple goods that are produced entirely in one country, but instead to think about the disaggregated nature of trade and production in the contemporary economy.
There's no timeline for when the U.S. and China will finish up their trade talks, and until that happens, President Trump's tariffs will remain in place. So many of the issues with the deal will remain unresolved. Back to you, Joe.
And the U.S. Treasury chief this week responded to rumors that the deal would be done by the November election. Steve Mnuchin says there's no deadline for the Phase 2 discussions.